A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes, as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. At this point, this is the end of Red Rising, which is wild. So make sure that you've read all the books. Easy peasy. Hey there, this is Cross.
And I'm PJ.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for, oh my gosh, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
This is fucking wild, man. Like, we finished a series. I haven't done that in decades?
A decade? Yeah. Which is
at least a decade.
Insane. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
As we've said, today is going to be a wrap-up episode for Dark Age, and we've got an excellent guest joining us to chat about all things Red Rising. Piéra Forde is here to help us deconstruct and chat about some of our favorite moments and concepts from the series. Piéra is an actress, screenwriter, and YouTuber who is absolutely fantastic. But you certainly don't need my praise because your work definitely speaks for itself. I managed to catch up through the Nevernight stuff that I've read Nevernight like in quarantine for the first time. And so I was like, oh, sweet. And then kind of rolled down the rabbit hole from there. So blame HowlerPod, but that's how I arrived here. So
I feel like I blame them for a lot. I mean, I feel like you've done it that's pretty much it at this point. I just read books and then I try to make them into films. So that's honestly it. That's me in a nutshell.
Fair enough.
That's pretty awesome.
Fair enough. Well, before we get into kind of the meat of the episode, generally we just talk about what we're drinking. So, PJ, what are you having?
I made myself a drink called a Necromancer. So I had to alter it a little bit because I couldn't find Lillet Blanc at all at the liquor store. And I also couldn't find white vermouth in general. So, an ounce and a half of absinthe. An ounce and a half of Saint Germain, which is an elderflower liqueur. And then an ounce and a half of Lillet Blanc is what would go there, but I did sweet vermouth and a dash of Angostura bitters instead. And then a dash of gin. And then I added a lemon twist and a cocktail cherry. So this is kind of an alteration or a flip on what's called a corpse reviver. So instead of being gin with a rinse of absinthe, it's absinthe forward with like a little dash of gin. So, really good.
To be themed after the
sweeter than I expected. What was that?
To be themed after the Necromancer, of course. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Good work.
That's why I did it.
Good work.
That's why I did it. And then following that up, I've got a smoothie sour from Talking Waters Brewing called High Five. It's their 5-year anniversary beer with, I think there's birthday cake in it. It's like strawberry and birthday cake and a whole bunch of shit.
Weird.
So
weird.
It's weird, but it's good.
This is a curious question. We've obviously got a very interesting craft beer scene here in the States. How is that for you over there, Piéra? Is it, I mean...
I'm not a big beer drinker myself. I'm going to ruin the whole... I primarily drink mead when it's available, which isn't often. I mean, like, it's just not a thing that... Unless I go to the Renaissance Fair, which has been cancelled the last 2 years because of COVID. But my best friend, for my push present, after giving birth, he bought me 2 bottles of this like really nice honey mead from one of the places down south. So can't really confirm or deny the craft beer situation, but I found a good mead supplier.
Yeah, I was going to say birthday cake is weird for a beer for sure. I saw the facial reaction. I was like, I can't not let that go. Like
interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a little wild.
Sounds good though.
Piéra, what are you having?
Like I said, I am breastfeeding, so I am currently on the tea, much to Severo's disdain.
And what type of tea? I mean, I'm sure.
Just casual black tea, 2 sugars and a milk. And it's probably cold now, so I'm going to get started on it.
Fair enough. I'm having a spin on a dark and stormy called the Storm Gods. Basically, I just swapped out a couple of things. The ginger beer for tonic, added a little bit more lime to compensate for the loss of the ginger beer flavor, and then spun in a little bit of just a tiny bit of bourbon to give it a little bit more darkness because it was too light for my tastes. Not for my taste, but for my eyes. So it didn't look like a Dark and Stormy, so I had to fix it. But yeah, that's that. And then I'm following that up with, oh God, what is it? Perpetual Outrage from New Anthem Brewing, the normal double IPA. Should be good.
Wonderful.
So,
very nice.
Well, sweet. So with that, we'll actually get into talking about the books in the show. PJ, obviously, this is your first time finishing it, and Piéra, I've heard, some opinions and whatnot, but this is a dark fucking book. Like, this is a soul crushing book. What was your first reaction?
Oof. So I've probably read it about 5 times now, in both physical and audio. Can I just first of all say the audiobooks, if you haven't, I'm not sure if you guys did audio or have done the audiobooks.
Oh yeah.
Phenomenal. Easily the best audiobooks I've literally ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I read it, I didn't love it because I think it just felt so hopeless and dark. Like, there was no light, and the things that were a little bit light ended up just getting like fucking skull stomped by the end of it. So it was just a really big emotional journey of like, I felt like shit for 3 days now having read it. And I also think I read it very quickly, so I didn't really let a lot of it sink in, a lot of the undertones and all that digest. So by the time up at the 5th read now, I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I think it's, definitely up there in like my top 3 of the series. But yeah, still super fucking dark.
Yeah. I mean, it's an unequivocal, like, just, I always think of like the end of Golden Sun as one of the darker moments of the series, right? And then all of a sudden we got like, because I caught up and started reading right when Iron Gold had came out, and then caught up with Dark Age when that came out as well. Actually set it down after the Day of Red Doves, and then picked it up like 2 months later because I couldn't move forward.
Fair.
It was a whole reaction. The big thing for me though is like the rest of the series doesn't have kind of these dark moments, and then it's an entire book that's just, it is like the end, the Darrow's triumph every single time, like every chapter. Yeah. Ugh. PJ's been sulking for like days now since we finished.
Hasn't recovered.
No.
Oh man, it's rough. It's pretty rough, all of it. But I'm so excited for the rest of it. Like I see where all of it's, not where it's going, but how it can go forward, and it all is just terrifying and amazing and enticing. So
yeah, one of the bigger components that's discussed by the fandom at large, of course, is the sort of fuck Lysander movement. And I think it's really important that we have a fuck Lysander conversation, because we have a guest coming on next week of whom is going to be voicing some sympathizer notions. So I think it's important that we get it out right now, right?
Podcast. No, see, the shitty thing is, the first time I read this book, like, vehemently hated this man. Was like ready to go to the mat to just like destroy this character. I hate to say that I can see some of the, like, I can see what Pearson's doing, which in my books is, the sign of a good writer, a character well written. If you hate a character so much, like with your depth of being, like, that's a good character. That's a well written character. But yeah, I'm heavily the president of the fuck Lysander movement, based on largely the end of the book. So
unanimously elected.
I will never get over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
easily.
We had a conversation with one of our listeners regarding sort of his progression. And we had talked about how it seemed like he was so much more about sort of the honor of shepherding the other colors, and like he devolved from there. And then their take on it after subsequent read-throughs was that it was always kind of there, and he just kind of let it out more towards the end. How did you feel about that sort of take?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah, having heard that now definitely makes sense. I mean, I don't think I paid too much mind to him in the original saga, because I mean, he's in it for a little bit. He's used as a pawn, and then you get a couple scenes with him. But especially, I mean, being raised by Cassius in general, you would hope for the best, but obviously there's going to be some bias there. Like it's like that nature versus nurture thing. Like obviously Cassius has gone through all this stuff now, but there will still be that ingrained sort of, I don't want to say like purism to them, but that same sort of like, that's how you were raised. It's hard to make change once it's so ingrained in you. But like I said, I think he's a pixie bitch. So I won't be taking any questions at this point. Like, not interested. He crossed the line for me. Like may have survived. But Nah, with that last one, not for me. Hard pass.
Yeah, not at all. The other part that upsets me about Lysander, and PJ and I talked a little bit about this when we were recording our episode the other day, but the fact that it is also the first like straight up sex scene that we get in the entire series is between him and Atalantia, right? Like, come
I'm really
on,
disappointed.
come on.
Like, props to Pierce for doing that, because I'm sure he would have known like how much, like, considering the fan base and what we're all like, I'm gonna say like most of us probably would have enjoyed a bit of smut at some point, but you know, I hated every second of it, which I think was largely the point. It was a very interesting power move on Pierce's part, but also a giant fuck you to the fandom. So a little offended, but like I've got some respect for it.
It just that's soul sucking to me, and like the whole concept of Lysander being in that situation and like basically being torn between two like aunties, not quite aunties, is just. But
it makes sense. It makes sense because he's a little bitch, and only little bitches fuck their aunts. No offense to anyone out there fucking your aunt. Like, do actually, you?
Maybe direct offense, but
full offense. Full offense. Please do not have sex with your aunt.
Oh man, yeah. PJ, did you have anything to add?
Add to that?
To the fuck aunties.
No, I mean,
or don't fuck aunties.
Yeah, I think it's just hilarious that it's directly butting in with his cousin, who's also fucking his aunt. And for that, it's his actual aunt.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I'd actually repressed that memory. Thank you.
For unlocking that for you. Yeah.
Yep. Just memory unlocked.
Oh man. Yeah, that one's tough. I guess my brain's working reverse chronological order, but I'm really thinking I'm thinking a lot about Victra and sort of her place in the later story in this book. And kind of Volga and Lyria and sort of kind of the sisterhood that happens there was really unexpected and like a great set of moments. It's also the only villain who dies is Harmony, you know, from that in this entire book. True. So I don't know. How do we all feel about kind of their alignment and the way that they moved and kind of the arcs for Lyria, Victra, Volga over the course of this second trilogy so far?
I'm not a fan. I love Volga. I would kill many men for Volga. I think she's great. And where I think and hope she's going with her arc, I'm really looking forward to it. And there were definitely some clues in the book of that. So very keen for her. Victra's my favorite. Like, I've always loved Victra. I've loved Victra since day one. I want to be Victra when I grow up. When I first read the book, I had a lot of problems with her a birth story, I guess. I don't know why. Like, I hadn't given birth by that point, but I was like, nah, genetically engineered women, of course you've got it easier. And then I went through it. Now I get it. But so I had much more respect for it. But I didn't, I don't know. As for the threesome that they became, I just don't know. I don't like Lyria. I've never been a huge fan of Lyria. I think Lyria was kind of pointless, especially with the whole, I can see what they're doing with the whole red hand situation and Harmony and all of that sort of stuff. I just didn't like it, but I'm more excited to see where she goes from here with Figment, and kind of who she is now is probably the best way where I stand on all three of them.
Yeah.
With Figment, it gives credence to her actually being a point of view, I feel like.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think it makes more sense now. I didn't love it right away, but she grew on me. She definitely grew on me throughout the time.
Yeah, Lyria is a tough character because the agency that she shows in Iron Gold is predominantly through Ephraim's perspective. That's the only time that we see her actually exert agency for the most part. And then finally in this story, she does actively take some agency after literally sitting in a cell for 2 months or something. I can't remember how long it is. But, you know, while she's sitting in the playpen of Electra... I want to love Lyria. I want to really like her. And I tried to make sure when we were going through the podcast that I didn't down talk her too much. But I do kind of agree that she's a sticking point, but it's a perspective that, you know, we've never been given before. So there's
that's what I was thinking. Like your main two women are Victra and Mustang, and they're like, you know, you've got Victra who's, you know, all brains and balls and brawn, and Mustang is mostly brain and obviously brawn because they're all gold and amazing. Whereas Lyria is she's just not that. And so I guess that kind of for me looking into it, as a woman, plays into that very much. Like, only strong female women are, interesting protagonists. Again, they're my kind of protagonists. They're the ones that I like. I like the ones who will beat the shit out of someone. Mm-hmm. But that's not necessarily for everyone, which is why I think it took me so long to like Mustang. I didn't like Mustang for the longest time because I just didn't. I found her boring. I found her, to me, she was complacent, and I couldn't see the, brainy side of it and how clever she actually was. And so, like I say, every time I read through the series again, I just fall more and more in love with her. And whereas Lyria is so different to both of those, and you forget she's so much younger as well, like obviously different to where these guys were when they were that age, but in terms of where she's been her entire life, just, stuck in the mines, she doesn't know much. Yeah. So you want to give her some, some grace.
Are there any other perspectives of yours that have changed over time in rereads, and PJ as well? Like, what perspective has changed now that you've completed the series for the first time? I'm assuming you'll re-listen to it. So,
yeah. So for me, one thing we commented on quite a bit through the first trilogy was the fact that we never really got any sort of read on non-Peerless Scarred Golds.
Mm.
Yeah.
Except for Pliny. I think Pliny's the only one we ever really meet. Until Lysander, I guess, if that counts. But he's kind of an extraordinary case. I'm still curious, like, what is that society, like, what is the average gold actually like? Because every single person we've met has been an extraordinary
piece of shit,
example
I'm sure.
of gold.
Like, they gotta be just the worst kind of people. Because Pliny was awful,
Yeah, Pliny's based on anything.
Yeah, right.
That's very
I don't
true.
know. That's kind of a question that's still kind of lingering for me. Like, what are they actually like? Because we're meeting like 1% of them.
Yeah, effectively, we're spending a lot of time with the 1%. That makes sense. Did you have any perspectives that changed when you finished the series, or in rereads, Piéra, like you were saying, beyond Mustang, obviously being a big one?
Yeah, Mustang was the main one. I think I grew to like Ephraim more. Let me think. I think I like Severo less, which is devastating to say, but I have reasons for that one.
I'd love to hear those reasons.
No, I don't want to. I feel bad even having them. I think the only thing that and now I look back at it, so my daughter's middle name is Aja, based off the series. And thinking back, like, I've grown to really like Aja as a character, even though she's fucking awful when you're, on the good guy's side, but you think about her as a character. And, even, I think it was Lorne who said, never fight Aja, never fight a river or running water or something like that. Yeah. And I was like, imagine that. Like, the greatest swords master in, all of the worlds and whatever, saying that about you. Like, that's it. You're done. Like, that's all you need to die
happy. That's the ball game, folks. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So I want like a background on Aja, and then obviously linking to the other Furies and Lysander's family and all that sort of stuff. And just that background and kind of I love origin stories, so I would love to hear, like, young Lorne's story, young Aja, all of those sorts of things. So not so much perspective change, but I've grown to appreciate them more as I read it, as opposed to the first time I read it, Aja kills a bunch of my favorite characters, I'm fuck you cow. But now I'm just like, what? She probably had a really good reason.
So similarly for me, that's kind of Octavia. Like, throughout Dark Age, not that I like her, and the last section of the book really kind of dropped that down a peg a little bit. But
for sure.
The more and more we got sort of flashbacks from Lysander about Octavia, the more I really wanted more backstory on Octavia. Yeah, she went from being just kind of a sourceless face of the big bad in the first trilogy to really, really deep. And there's a ton of lore there, I'm sure, in the background, and I really want that sort of released somehow.
It's so interesting that you both brought up points that basically came about because of Lysander's perspective, right? Like, the only reason we get a lot of this history is because of Lysander.
No credence to Lysander,
so
please. No apologists here.
It's like meta credence, but it's not. It is less new. Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's a well-written character. If you hate this person, but you're like, tell me more. So, kudos to Pierce for that, but also fuck off.
The other one is, I think, Dio, Romulus's mom. There's so many D names, but she talks about the fact that Anastasia played. No, not Dido, because that's
Dio's sister.
Yeah, who is?
I know who you mean. Oh my god. Okay.
Man, what is anyway, grandma Romulus, grandma Raw, yeah, Jesus, messing everything up already. But she recounts a couple of different stories about like Anastasia playing the piano and that being a huge deal, and then that triggering the memory back in Iron Gold. And PJ brought it up at the time, and I wanted to just emphatically agree, but I can't spoil the rest of the series for him, and I can't talk ahead. But I was like, yeah, you're totally right. I want to know more. I want to know what she knows. I want to know all that history. I want that background on Lauren. I want the Rim family tree in the past. I want to know more about Revis even. Like, give me that. Give me it. Damn,
I remember that really didn't surprise me because I'm used to Pierce's writing by that point. But when my partner read it for the first time with is it Romulus? Oh, there's so many bloody R names. Anyway, the fact that he dies so quickly. Yeah. With the and like the fact that he doesn't make it to the shroud or whatever, like that's hilarious. Like that's devastating. And then who was it? A couple chapters later, someone goes, "How did he die?" And like still talking, or he spoke too much or whatever. I just found that I found that so interesting because like this character is set up essentially like Lorne, like untouchable, really like just I don't know, just above all of it. And then for him to die like that, and for someone to say shit like that. Like hilarious, but devastating, super devastating. It's like don't meet your heroes. So
yeah, totally. That's sort of the brutality of that moment. And I think a lot of like the sequel series is like being an honorable man is only good for so long. And that's clearly what Darrow's learned. And that's what Lorne had even learned before. And that's why he was like, don't become a soldier because you can be an honorable man if you're not a soldier. Ties into his whole, parental theme in the second arc for sure at this point, which is, fantastic. I always laud praise on these books so widely, and it probably to PJ he's like, you just love everything, and it's like there are other books that are bad, I swear. Like I brought you through one of the best series really first.
Yeah,
right.
Which is fair. I mean, I feel the same. I feel like I'm just like, oh my god, these books are amazing. Like I feel like the amount of people who, it sounds really up my ass, but like you think of Red Rising, you think of me, like in terms of I think I've just been here so long and I'm just constantly talking about how good it is. But like there are that's the thing. Like I didn't love it the first time I read it, and there are things that I dislike about it. Granted that I love them now, but they're just good books. So
yeah, and like you've said, like TGR's performance for the first 3 books is bar none the best audiobook presentation ever.
Yeah,
ever
100%. Like I sadly prefer them to reading the physical book, which isn't something that I was saying earlier. I don't listen to podcasts because I talk so fast. My brain computes much faster. And so anyone really slow kills me. So that's why I listen to it on 3 speed. And so I just smash through it very quickly. But it's just, absolutely.
Yeah, 3 speed's nuts.
But I absolutely, I think I listen at the max speed. I think it's 2x speed for me is the fastest I can listen at, or the fastest possible on
audiobooks.com or whatever you use. Yeah.
Hey, I don't know. That's what I downloaded a long time ago. Forgot I subscribed and ended up with like 15 credits a year and a half later. So that's what I use. But I think it maxes out at 2x speed, and that's what I listen at, which is too fast for a lot of people. But
my partner listens to it at I think he listens to it at like the normal speed. And so I get in the car and it's playing, and I'm like, just can we please like
the next sentence, please
speed it up? I'm thinking please. Like 3 sentences. Yeah, exactly. But I would listen to TJR that slowly if I had to under duress. But so you've both done the audiobooks?
Oh yeah. The first time I read it, I listened to it. But
did you have thoughts on what were your thoughts on? I guess obviously reading hearing the first 3, and then obviously having new POVs, new narrators, and then the switch between Lyria and Lysander in the first and second books.
So I was so turned off by both Lyria and Lysander's voice actors originally that I would listen to Ephraim and Darrow, and then I'd pick up the physical book and read.
I was the same.
Because I could not listen to them. I couldn't. So even if I was in the middle of like a long car ride, I'd be like, cool, I guess I'm pausing this and listening to music for the rest of the car ride, and then I'll read it when I stop.
Yeah, I liked Ephraim's. I love Tim Gerard Reynolds. I am trying to figure out a way to get him on this show. I want to. I'd love to. I think it'd be fun.
Praise.
That would be amazing.
We used to talk about him almost every episode during the first trilogy. But the other 2, I don't hate them as much as a lot of people seem to, but I didn't love them either. I don't know.
I definitely, looking back on it, I remember I hated Lyria like across the board in book 1. I didn't like Lysander in book 1, but I hated Lysander in book 2 even more. And I think I was used to Lysander in book 1 now. And so I think a lot of people said that he sounded really old. But I liked that because obviously he's, I don't know, like he always seemed older than he was. Whereas the new one just, and the Cassius for me, like I don't, like you can't have the original, say Cassius for X amount of years and then just come in and be like Cassius, but I get it because of the dialect difference. It still kills me.
So I have an important question real quick. The Orange Master Maker throughout Dark Age, what's his name? How do you say it?
I'm sure.
The Orange Master Maker. I can't say it because I'll sway your opinion.
Starts with a G.
Yeah, I'm just trying to picture it. How do I...
We say it wrong, so like factually,
you're
say
better.
It very wrong.
Gilrastes?
We get yelled at for it.
Gilrastes? What do you guys say? Now I forgot.
What did you say?
Gilrastes? I forget.
Gilrastes. That's what we say. That's what we say.
No, okay. No, I'm wrong. What is it?
But it's Glirastes because it's GLI, not GIL. And I got brutally eviscerated for pronouncing it wrong for 10 episodes.
But then I said Gilrastes, didn't I? GIL.
GIL. Yeah. But it's
GLI. Yeah. Gilrastes. Yeah.
So
I was just thinking.
I say Gil. Yeah. Right. I got so many people like, you guys say this wrong so often that I had to comment. And I was like, you're right. My bad.
It got to the point where I would just put Gil, like GIL, in the notes.
Orange mate, him. Fair, totally fair. Like that's the thing. Like it killed me going through, like listening, because I mean, as a reader, like I think it was the other day I was explaining. You know the word I fucking gonna say it wrong. Gargantuan.
Yeah. Yep.
I'd never said gargantuan out loud for any reason. I didn't realize. And so whenever I read it as garangutan. Don't know why. Don't even know if that's
that makes
a word.
sense.
And so it's just like that, like words that you see and have never said. Whereas with this one, like especially the names, like you hear it, and then so the way I in my brain now has always been the way that TJR has said anything.
Yeah.
And so there's a few moments in book 2 where you get Cassius or you get somebody else said something. But TJR a couple of times says servo. I don't know if you guys caught that, but it was.
Oh, I did catch that. Oh,
I was like, whoa, you know the name. Like you've known the name for years. It doesn't just change. Anyway, you're probably having an off day. I'm sorry. Like praise TJR.
Mm-hmm. It could also be I'm going to give him a little bit of credit in that. It could be an autocorrect thing. Depending on how he has his teleprompter or whatever.
But even then, you'd know. Unless he was reading it for the first time and was like, because I've done it as well. Like I've done audiobooks and I've just read it and then gone, oh, actually that was wrong. But like, my dude, you know what it is. You know who it is. And so that's just another thing that I had with the audiobooks. So it was just really interesting.
To add fuel to the fire as far as the Glirastes thing goes. I misheard something in the audiobook because I listened to it at 2x speed, and sometimes I'm working while I'm listening and sometimes I'm doing homework and just bullshit's happening. Mm-hmm. I thought I heard Lysander's voice actor say Gilrastes. So I'm like, oh my God, we're wrong. It's Gilrastes. And for an entire episode, I tried to say Gilrastes. That did not end well for us.
Oh no.
So there was that. Also, I initially thought it was Cassius.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way I've ever heard that name pronounced.
Yeah. I was the opposite. I'd only ever heard Cassius. And then obviously reading it looks like Cassius. But then being on all of the Red Rising forums that I'm on, people coming in and being like, oh, well, if you look at the Latin roots or some sort of, depending where you're from, and I guess accents are involved and all that. Because I'm sure I say different words, to you guys just based on accent alone.
Right.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
I don't know about that.
The best modern example, I think, that I'm sure people have brought up, but I have been completely I've segregated myself from any sort of forums because I absolutely did not want to be spoiled on anything. Mm. So I'm sure somebody's brought it up, but Muhammad Ali, his real name is Cassius Clay. And that's the only time I've ever heard the name Cassius.
Right.
So my initial read through was, all right, that's Cassius.
I've heard Cassius, but when I've seen it, it was spelled different. And so it was just oh, cool.
It might be spelled It might be
Cassius Clay is spelled the way that you think it is. It's spelled the same way, but I do agree. Obviously, it's the Latin root. I think from the early time periods. And
I'm sure there was a reason that he did it. Surely he wouldn't just go, "Oh, TJR has laid down all of this groundwork. I'm just gonna fuck it up." So
benefit of the doubt. It's totally
Do you think
fair.
he read it ahead of time, or do you think he listened ahead of time, or do you think
I
he just
don't
jumped
know.
in?
It made me think he did it, but then I was just kind of like, look, having done audiobooks, I know the circumstances aren't always, you don't have a chance to read X amount of books or listen to X amount of books.
Mm-hmm.
But you would think that, and again, I've been lucky enough sometimes that I get like the author sends through like pronunciation guides of how to say it or how it's said or something like that. So you're not, and again, being fantasy as well, like some of the fucking names you get are just keyboard smashers. And you're like, cool, I'll just riff and see what comes to mind. But yeah, I genuinely don't know.
Anything in Nagal is just fucking ridiculous.
Nagal, yeah. The entirety. Oh, man.
Keyboard smash, for sure.
Tier Morga, yeah, the whole thing. Oh, I mean, the pronunciations are definitely wild. I had a thing. Oh, one of the things that I wanted to bring up at the very least is we spend a lot of time because we plod through the series, to be honest, to make sure that PJ can keep up and like spend time because he's a slow reader, and we do that. But we spend like a lot of time talking. Well, he threw himself under the bus to begin with, so like it's been since high school. Like we can like let that exist. That's fair. Everyone should know.
So to give sort of a hard example,
not defend himself. He's actually
to give a hard example of how quickly I read. I read at the pace, at 2x pace. Like, on the audiobook, if you go to 2x speed, that's the same pace I read at. So, the reason I do that is because I read while I listen to it. So, that's my reading
insane. Pace. That's insane. How do you do that? Sorry. I have, like, a very ADHD brain in terms of, like, if I'm reading, that's all. Like, my brain cannot handle more than just reading. How do you do that?
It's one-to-one, though. Because it's the same word that I'm reading that's in my head.
Yeah.
Like
I must be off then.
It's like listening to something and reading the subtitles at the same time.
But we have our website engineer does it the same. Yeah. So it's nuts.
I think I read faster than I listen.
I feel it helps me. I feel it helps me really solidify everything in my head because I have to listen through it 2-3 times on top of reading it before an episode. So.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, like I read really fast, and I think I probably do skim read a lot of things, like the words that aren't important, in a book. And so there are a lot. When I listen to the audiobook, there are a lot of things that I've missed in the actual book because my brain is like colors or locations or something because I've just gone it's just as fast as I can, and so I go back or names, and I'll go back and I'll be like, oh. It was Glorastes and not Gilrastes. Gargantuan Garangutang. Like, what the fucking word is Garangutang? I'm sorry. Like, that's
Gargantuan Garangutang, yeah.
That's only something I've come to notice in, like, the last week. So I'm still dealing personally with that on, like, a deep molecular level of, like, how the fuck did you get that wrong for, like, 28 years? So,
what's the word that I've said wrong so many times, PJ? Rain? No, not rain. It's something to do with... Fuck. Anyway, we went into like a whole like 20.
Sovereign?
We had to cut it. Sovereign. Yeah. Like they're two different things to me in my brain, and it's wrong, but it's fine.
Sovereign
and sovereign.
Oh,
I think of as different, but it's the same word. But they're I pronounce the meanings
English
differently.
Language, man. Yeah. Who needs it?
Fuck it. Speaking of the English language, though, part of like what I wanted to talk about at the very least is we spend a lot of time because we go so slow through the series talking about the poetry, the themes, the Greek layerings, the Latin parts. That's been one of my favorite things to do, especially through Dark Age and Iron Gold because it becomes so prominent. I arrived at this series as a recommendation after I read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. So like I immediately fell in love with this and whatever else when I was like 20. And yeah, so what do you read into the poetry? Do you pay attention to the poetry even in the text, or?
I'm honestly not really. I think because I was just when I first got into it, I think Golden Sun had just come out, and I was I don't know, early 20s, early to mid 20s.
We're the same age.
I just remember.
So yeah,
are we? I feel really old. It's me just admitting it. What was I going to say? So at that point where I was as a reader was I loved, like explosions and death and killing and like drama. And to now reading it as an adult, I'm like, let's sit with the quiet moments and let's like, engage more into the poetry and like the actual art. I didn't think I gave Pierce as an author enough credit when I first read it. I was just like, oh yeah, it's another, at that point, YA hot Hunger Gamesy type of thing. So I was like,
especially
cool.
that first book. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I was like, whatever. And then especially, going into Iron Gold. And I think that was such a, like not culture shift, but
A tonal shift. Yeah.
Yeah, tonal. I was like, tectonic plates? No, that's not what I need. Tonal plates. Oh, tonal. Fuck off, Piéra.
Tonal plate. Tonal earthquake. It's all fine.
I'm running on such little sleep that it was such a shock to me. Yeah, because obviously it's Iron Gold is like the mature older brother of the original trilogy. The original trilogy is just like, yeah, fucking jacking off in bushes and, you know, shit everywhere. Whereas this one's much more, yeah. So no, the answer that I'll get back to is no, I didn't. I have come to every time I reread it more. But I'm not like a deep analytical reader. I'm still very much the escapism. I love characters, so depending on, you know, if the characters are well written and I connect the characters, the like lyrical prose and all that sort of stuff isn't my bag. But as I get older and read things that aren't fantasy, trying to appreciate it more.
Yeah, fair. All right, that makes sense. That was a great way of answering that question. Nah, it's
sorry,
fine.
I babble a lot.
We babble a lot. That's why most of our episodes are right around 2 hours long. It's a problem at this point.
Based on that question and something I hadn't really made the connection to until just now, we used to talk about all the like sci-fi references that used to be in the first trilogy, and those completely fell off in favor of like stoic quotes and like really sort of Roman history.
Poetry and yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like you go from like Severo to Lorne, and there's like such a difference. If like the first trilogy is Severo, second trilogy is Lorne.
True. Yeah. That's a great comparison. Very, very apt.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, good work.
Keeps me up at night. I just plan what I'm going to say.
You say that as I'm staring at a bucket of notes. As though I am planning what I'm going to say.
But nothing is wrong with that. I wish I could be more of a plotter than a pantser.
See, I'm more of a as a also writer, but not nearly as accomplished by any means. Totally was a pantser. Tried plotting didn't work, so went back to pantsing and just finished a bunch of projects. And it's like, oh, now I get it. But yeah. Anyway, that was a side tangent.
I don't even think I had pants at that point. So like plotter, pantser, and me naked running through the fields, hoping for the best. So
hoping that the story comes out coherent in the end, right?
Exactly.
So say we all. One of the things that obviously hits with this book is we talked about it earlier, the dark themes. Characters die. We lose a main POV. We lose Seffi, who's been with us since Morningstar. You know, we lose a lot over the course of, and a lot of ground over the course of this book. Literally, like Earth within like 2 sentences or something like that, which is insane. There's a whole book there that is the conquering of Earth, or like 200 pages or whatever. But I don't know. How do we feel about the character deaths, the dark moments that happen throughout this this book?
I'm still not ready to admit that like Alexander is dead.
I know.
You can't keep like that happened 3 times in that book. He's like, he's dead. He's not. He's dead. He's not. Okay, now he's actually been shot in the face. He's 100%. Yeah. You cannot come back from that. Because, you know, there were so many times that he was just, you know, blue balling us with, oh, he's dead. I'm going to mourn him. And jokes, he's hidden in the cave with no hair looking like a, you know, foreskin. But I just, like that one devastated me. I cried for like 3 days. And that's primarily why I hate Lysander and I find him irredeemable. If he didn't, but I understand why he did it. Like he had to become irredeemable for most readers. Everyone else I could kind of live with, I think. Ephraim sucks, but I could deal with. Seffi, like dope way to go out, but I kind of hated her by the end of it.
Orion.
That fucked me up. Good God, especially
that's in the first 150 pages. Like
I remember picking up the book for the first time. I think for some reason I just flicked through it. Dumb. Don't do that. But I got to the point where they just rescued her. And I think her, you know, the way he says that he, you know, she salutes him without her fingers, Hail Reaper, all that sort of stuff. In my brain, when I first read that sentence, I'm like, she's betrayed him. She's going to like, you know, she's saying Hail Reaper and then blowing herself up. So in my brain, I was ready to like crack on with Orion. I was done with her. And then to see what actually happened, fucked me up, man. Like,
tragic. Yeah.
Oof, big oof. But I'm glad because it feels like so many people go through so much, like the characters go through so much shit and no one kind of, I don't want to say deals with the PTSD of it all, but essentially deals with the PTSD of it. Like Darrow has taken some shit and yeah, we get to see some of Darrow's shit. And I guess Ephraim, now that I think about it, more so in the second series,
saw
obviously.
A lot of shit. Yeah,
now that I think about it in the second series, there's a lot more acknowledgement of what the fuck they've been through. Whereas in book 1, I feel like Darrow just kept, you know, getting hit. And obviously they live in this tough world. But I liked that you kind of got to see that some people just don't come back from war, essentially. So that's where I'm at with it.
That was Ephraim's perspective for the first book, and then into the second book. That's what he added, was like, here's what we lost in the intervening 10 years. Like,
yeah,
he was kind of the pain, the trauma, the PTSD of it all. So, PJ, what were you going to say?
I came to not trust any character deaths.
No, you did not.
It really tickled my conspiracy theorist brain for a little while there for basically every single one of the character deaths.
Except Cassius, though. You were in on Cassius being dead, which is wild.
Really?
Yeah.
You were in.
No,
yeah.
man, any off-screen death is not on the cards. Like, if I don't get to see a shot in the face body, someone mourning the shot in the face body, Ronna crying in the different, nah, not it, not that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we'd written off Cassius. You had written off Cassius, which is why I was like, thank God, because I wanted that payoff to happen.
That's one of the only ones.
That is the only one.
Yeah, that is really the only one. I feel like I infuriated you for a while there about me not believing that Virginia was dead.
Well, I knew that she wasn't because I've already read it, so it's not fair to say that. But yeah,
Did you think she was dead after Red Doves?
Yeah, yeah. Well, everyone else says that she's dead, right? Like, everyone else says it, and so I was like,
of course,
I'm not gonna not say what the characters are saying because I can't like forward read the plot for him, you know. So.
Oh no, of course, no, but
yeah.
Okay, no, I didn't even think that. I think I was just like, nah, you can't kill Mustang. Nope, not happening.
Plot armor.
So, okay, fair, yeah, exactly. Like when Dara was like about to 100% be dead, get raped, left in a ditch. Plot armor. I was like, oh, okay. Even with Cassius at the end, yeah.
Ugh, that moment with
That's
Atlas
crazy.
is something else. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of violence in this. We obviously also get, like, in the sequel trilogy, a ton of villains. Like, we have so many that I almost can't imagine them all being paid off perfectly in the sequel. Like, we had to get rid of Serafina via Shell because that's reality, and that's kind of the, you know, you have to, like, start ditching characters. But how do you adequately, like, pay off Atlas, Atalantia? There's just so many. Ajax, I mean, where do they all go? Apollonius?
Yeah, I love Apple though. Like I've always like Tactus. I've got a bird. I named him Tactus. Like I don't know what's wrong with me. Like Tactus was a very shitty.
Tactus is a piece of shit. Yeah, right.
I love them. I love, like, apart from Tharsis. I love the others. I love the other two boys.
Yeah,
big fan. And just of what you were saying, like killing people, like toothless, tongueless. In like the first, everyone had like these theories that this is Ragnar's dad, or that, you know, he was going to be some, you know, like, why did he get in the... Yeah, no, just yeet. Pieces. Didn't need him. Just yeeted into the song. Cool.
Fucking
but
dead.
That's the thing. I don't care about half the villains because there are so many and they're so overwhelming. Like, I love Atlas. Very keen to see, like, his whole deal.
Yeah.
But apart from that, like, I don't really care about Atalantia. Like, ooh, she's sexy and, like, incestual and scarred, like, dope. So am I. Like,
she's
whatever.
a snake. Ooh,
exactly.
So am I. Whatever incestual and scarred.
I heard it as soon as I said it. Yeah, this is why I don't leave the house. Anyway, skipping that. I just read Oedipus, which is why my brain, like, incestual is the word that's sticking out, and incestuous is the one in my head at the moment. So
that'll stick with you for a long time.
I'm gonna pull that out in the worst circumstances. Like now.
Yeah, right. The reverse complex is her name, though. What's the mom in that? What's
Jocasta.
her? Yeah, Jocasta, because it's the Jocasta complex and the Oedipus complex. Anyway.
Yeah. So I've been quoting that all week. I've just been like, that's very Oedipus of you. So what a Jocasta complex? Like, fuck off. Yeah, I don't care about a lot of the villains because it's so many, and I think that's why I hated the book to begin with, because it was just so overwhelmingly bad.
Sure.
That it was just kind of like, cool. I'm tired. It exhausted me, which, again, when you think about it, great. It's exactly what you want your book to do to people. Like, have an emotional, profound effect, not exhaust them. Always. Yeah. And like, I couldn't even name all of the villains right now off the top of my head.
It's to me, in my head, it's like the Empire Strikes Back of books, in a lot of ways, right? Where, like, the Empire Strikes Back for Star Wars ends on, like, this big down note, right? For the whole sequence. I only say this because PJ is illiterate, so I need to bring up something so that he can understand what we're talking about.
I haven't actually seen or read those ones, so.
Oh, well, it's fine. It's seen. Yeah. That's a movie from
You're
the 70s.
Alone.
It's okay.
I'm like, yes, Star Wars references.
Yes. Oh, Star Wars for sure. Yes. Yeah. That moment where
I'm
everyone
not a sci-fi
realizes.
reader.
Oh,
like that's
okay.
the thing. Red Rising is the first sci-fi that I had ever read and absolutely loved. And so when people are like, "Oh, you love the sci-fi book," I'm like, "I fucking hate sci-fi. Absolutely not." Like, "Oh, but you love Red Rising." I was like, but book 1 is where it got me, and that was more fantasy, dystopian, Hunger Gamesy. And the Hunger Games was my shit. When I tell you, it was my absolute DNA for like 10 years. So yeah, just sorry off of that.
No, yeah, I mean it belongs and part of the thing that we're going into now, and don't ruin it or like impart impressions for PJ, but we're going to read Mistborn next, according to our fans and whatnot, by Brandon Sanderson. And so part of the reason that was obviously recommended is kind of the fantasy connections and things like that. So it's very different. I have feelings about Sanderson, but that's where we're going next.
I also have feelings about Sanderson.
Yeah. But it's going to be a good time. We'll have fun with it. But yeah, I mean, part of the reason that Red Rising is so compelling is because it is kind of just Romans and space Vikings. You know, like it is fantasy just set in a sci-fi setting. You know, it's everything but Dune, but made more reasonable and logical. Based
on that, like, did you guys, again, I don't know how much sci-fi you guys read, or not read, either or.
Yeah.
But I found, especially with the second saga, I found it really hard to visualize. And as I don't know if as a filmmaker or whatever, I love to, I visualize what I'm reading, obviously, duh. But I struggled really hard in the second 2 books because of the scale of things. Like, we're on different planets, cool. But the ships are like, 50 kilometers long. And I don't, like, again, metric in terms of where we live. But it was just too big for me to, like, I'm like, oh, I'll look up in the sky and what could I see? And I'm like, 50K, that's like a 20-minute, 30-minute drive. I'm like, that's a long fucking ship for starters. And then, the mech things that run a...
The like Drachenjagers.
Yeah, the fact that golds in general are 6 feet tall. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know a lot of 6 foot tall people. Like,
PJ is standing right now, but he's 6'7", so he is actually the size of an average gold. So like PJ is a gold by stature.
Good lord.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. And the fact that obsidians are bigger than that. It's just like going off the metric, I'm probably the size of a brown. Maybe the red is smaller than me. And so to me, I'm just like, I can't. And that's why I'm really interested.
I am a gray.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, who? I don't know. But the fact that that's what I'm interested to see if it ever, when it gets made into, a TV show. How do you do that? I guess similar to Lord of the Rings, Hobbits, but still.
A lot of perspective really stuff.
Hard. Yeah. I just found it really hard scale-wise with this book. So a lot of it, I think, kind of went out the window in my brain because I was like, I don't know what that looks like, too big. It's just like the characters existing in a black room of playing out the action, and then everything else is just kind of background noise.
And I think that's where, like, a lot of people get caught up in the argument of do you do animation or do you do live action, right? Is especially given the second series, like, like most of that's going to have to be CGI in terms of the larger battles. You can't do a Battle of the Bastards until the last part of this book, in theory, because that's actually like horses riding in on each other and everything else. And it's got a lot of drama there, but everything else, combat-wise, outside of like the immediate residuals, has to be predominantly CGI. How else are you going to pull a lot of that off? So
yeah,
I do agree with that. Other moments, though, I feel like are very cinematic, and I think that speaks to Pierce Brown's experience as a screenwriter and like moving into screenwriting more and more. You can kind of see that in the sequel series. I think.
I feel like those arguments can still be made. The same thoughts and the same arguments can be applied to Morningstar as well, though.
Yeah,
because that's way more space battle-y than even the second 2.
Even a bit in Golden Sun as well. Like, they spend most of the time in space on a ship. But I think that's what it was for me. Like, they stayed in one spot. Like, they were in a ship, or they were in the Institute, or they were, in specific places. Whereas
or on
with
Mars,
Dark Age,
the Iron Rain, which is just one scene, which, you can imagine.
But with, Dark Age, like, obviously so many different POVs, so many different places, like, all of Ephraim's stuff in, like, in the Obsidian world and shit like that, or which in my brain is just Valhalla. Realistically, it's just essentially Vikings. It's Kattegat with Vikings, but all of that sort of stuff, like, I just can't. I don't know. Like, part of me, I think if it had to go and like be film, I would want it to be animated because that way they can do everything, like absolutely everything. It can be as close to the book as possible. Live action, much harder, obviously, but then I'm also kind of like, but what if I just slip in my resume and CV and hope for the best. Like, I'm very small, but like CGI, like you could buff me up, like give me Victra and I will beef the shit up. So I'm like on two minds. I want to be on it, but then I also don't want it to be a series at all because the books are so good. And it just, but then you hope that it's Hunger Games-ish in the way that it just enhanced the experience.
Yeah, that it like builds upon also like everyone else's impression, and like it's a big
and then you get your Octavia
deal.
Backstory and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. So. Right. Well, right. Yeah, not that like the Ballad of Songs and Stakes was that great, but Songs and Stakes. Yeah, right. I did not have a good time.
We didn't need it.
Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page. I was like,
because I was so excited for it.
I wanted it.
Like,
yeah, right. PJ has no idea. No. PJ hasn't read The Hunger Games or seen The Hunger Games, which is right.
Blasphemy.
You see my problem here? You see my problem.
Catching Fire is my like fucking comfort movie. I've seen it 17 times.
Wow.
By itself. I won't watch the other ones, but I've seen that one 17 times. No, I was like an obsessive teenager. It was disgusting. I went to a dark place. Good
Fair enough. PJ, you were going to say something.
Just speaking about the series, the upcoming series, we know the budget for it. Do we know the scope?
Budget they're seeking?
Is that I thought it was picked up.
Well, no. So they're looking at final green light, right? Which is where they're at right now, according to Brian McClellan, Powder Mage author interview that they did 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you've listened to that podcast, but Pierce did an interview in which he actually talked about some of the stages that they were in and kind of the conversations that they were in, where he's picked up a number of writers. They have gone through a number of initial interviews. They're past pitching stage, and now they're in final funding and final distributor stage, basically. So pre-pilot, but distributor.
Yeah, I do know some things that I don't think I'm allowed to say, so I won't. But I'm excited. There's one thing about it that I'm very excited for, which is a person who's attached to it, if they're still attached to it. Like last I heard they were. That's one thing that I'm very fucking keen for. And from what I've seen of it, interested to see how it will translate, especially given the terrain of where the world is going in terms of what's popular at the moment.
Foundation, whatnot.
In that sort of genre. Yeah. Like obviously when you think of Red Rising as a book, Hunger Games is probably Ender's Game is kind of the first thing that comes to mind in how they would have pitched it. And so you would think, it would have been popular back then when like Divergent was coming out and all that sort of shitty attempts to remake the same thing. So hopefully given some time and, some space from that YA hubbub, that it will fit in better. But I'm also kind of like, I feel like they're angling more towards fantasy these days with like The Witcher and Wheel of Time and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm just kind of like, unless it's like fucking vampires where it comes back up again and makes a resurgence, I'm like, it's going to be really hit and miss because it is such a genre-specific show. And so I'm like...
I think it'll take time to, like, hook an audience regardless. That's kind of why...
For sure.
Even when this interview came out and whatnot, when Pierce was talking about it, I was reserved about the whole thing. And I'm like, you know what? It'll happen or it doesn't. And Hugh Howey with Wool had, like, a decade worth of, like, false starts and stops. And, like, he's like, I won't believe it until cameras roll because I've sold this, like, 3 times.
Exactly.
So...
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Like you can shoot a whole show and then it gets thrown in the trash anyway. So
yeah, exactly. So like I was like, okay, I totally agree with that mentality. Right. Until there's like serious either star power attached plus they're filming. Like in those moments, it's like cool. Rebecca Ferguson sitting down and filming with Hugh Howey. We're good. That sounds like we're a go, but we're nowhere near that yet.
I was gonna say like any book adaptation, like. Excited, hopeful, but also super fucking reserved and very like, ooh, I don't want to hate it because, I don't know if you guys were, I wasn't like a Shadowhunters fan, but just seeing like how all of that, these super popular books, everyone's obsessed with, everyone loves, the movie tanked and then they're like, oh, make a TV series, tanked even harder than the movie. Like, and that's like one of the biggest properties in like YA history or whatever.
Yeah.
And so for that to tank, you're just kind of like, ooh, yeah. You're like, okay, if that can tank, but then also that's a lot of added pressure as well. So who knows?
Yeah, I saw that movie on opening day with a girlfriend at one point, almost a decade ago, it feels like. But yeah, it had to be forever ago. And I had not read the books at that point, went in and I watched it and I was like, well, this is an interesting enough premise, but like,
it
seems poorly executed. And then I read the books and I was like, oh, this is good. Like, this is a good time. So yeah, PJ has no idea. He's just sitting there in the void.
I wouldn't recommend. Like I wouldn't recommend reading them. I don't think.
Yeah, no, at this point. Yeah.
No, they're done. They had the time back then.
Mm-hmm. I just like to feel included. So thanks for having me.
Here on the wall. Patrick Starr in the conversation here. Yeah. It's perfect. So we've gone through most of this episode without talking about Darrow, which is crazy, but also logical because of the way the book kind of skirts around Darrow in a lot of ways, and Severo. How do we all feel about the changes in the themes of Darrow in the second trilogy and sort of the move here? I've made the argument for you, in case you haven't heard. My argument is that there's two different sides of Darrow. There's the Reaper and there's Darrow, and Darrow wants to be with his family, and the Reaper is a different personality, of which I think dies at the end of Dark Age when Lysander beats him, when the sickle is broken. That's my thematic.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
That's my thought with where this arc is going. But
I was like, Lysander doesn't beat him.
Well, no, he's broken.
Let's just gotcha.
Yeah. In quotes, for everyone who's listening, because I did that physically. Anyway,
we've been discussing Darrow as two very discrete characters, effectively,
in
the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, in the last two books, really in the last book, more or less. Dark Age is really kind of where it diverges more, and we talk about it more, but. I absolutely think that was kind of intended, though. And he even refers to himself as Darrow and the other sort of personality, as we call it, as the Reaper. And similarly, Mustang refers to the Mother and the Sovereign as two basically separate personalities and almost separate, distinct characters. So I think it's intended entirely.
Oh, for sure. Like, he is what he was made to be, essentially. But, I mean, I kind of go off the first time I read it, which was my initial thoughts, and then to where I'm at after having sat with it for a while. And I think it changed for me very much when I think it was either he or Mustang said something along the lines of the fact that Darrow didn't go back, the fact that he didn't choose his family because Mustang had it. And, like, what's he going to do, essentially, that she can't do? And I thought that was very... like, yay, feminism, but I really liked that because I was like, that's a very fucking valid point. And it gets further on the lines of, if he was to leave, what's his army, essentially? Like, he's cultivated this war in which, at this point people are questioning, even though, like, the answer for starters, fuck you right off, sir. You are the reason we are here, for starters. Shut your mouth and sit down. And, if he just, your leader, if your leader just dips, and you've, served the last 10 years in a foreign planet away from your family fighting for this dream, and the dream holder dips, you're kind of like, well, fuck that. Whereas Mustang has that. Mustang has the children getting back. And that's not to be like, oh, Mustang stays at home and looks after the kids sort of thing.
No.
But what can't Victra and Mustang do that the boys could do? Apart from, yay, violence, but fucking Victra, you've seen her. I wouldn't cross that. Absolutely not. I'd fear her 10 times more than Severo. Jesus Christ. So
that's a decision. Oh, sorry.
No, go.
That's a decision I completely did not understand Severo to make.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how he could. I get the want to, but I don't understand the rationalization of, I'm going to spend 14 months in a spaceship to leave the war that I'm helping lead to maybe go find my daughter who's been taken today.
See, I didn't either. But then when I thought about Severo's whole family thing and how his whole backstory, apart from loyalty, which was the hard part for him, obviously leaving Darrow, who was his chosen family, as Victra as well, chosen family. And I guess she kind of chose him more than anything. But the daughters, like, he doesn't want to be the kind of father that Thitchner was to him. And, like, circumstances are different and everything like that. But as, you kind of is alluded to in the series, like, those kids are Severo's life. And I think I mean, I don't know if you guys have kids, but having had a kid for fucking 10 weeks, like, even that, I'm ready to fucking go to the mat for her. And she's super boring. Like, she doesn't fucking do anything. She's a baby. She just sucks me dry and sleeps and shits on me. Like, super boring. But I fucking
It sounds
love
like a
that
great
kid.
time. Yeah.
No, truly, I hate kids. Like, I'm not a kid person. Never thought I would have kids. I love this one. This one's all right. But it's just, even then, and I don't know if it's different for a man, obviously maternal, all that sort of shit that goes into it, but I can understand that. And I guess coming from not a similar background to Severo family wise, but it's always been a not easy thing to navigate. And so I can see that, and I can see it more every time I read it, I hate it more. Whereas when I first read it, I was like, yep, makes sense. You know, Severo off with his family, off with his girls. But it wasn't until I kind of came to accept the, you know, trust Mustang and Victor to get the job done sort of thing, that I was like, yeah, fuck you, go back. Like, Darrow needs you more. Like, he needs you as like a person. The team needs you. Like, I get it. And that's why I said I hated Severo. Well, not hated Severo, but had thoughts
mixed
where
feelings.
I just like, mixed feelings about Severo towards the end of the book. Like, normally, if I had read this book and he had stayed with Darrow and the ending that he came to, I would be shitting my pants. I would be terrified. I mean, like, I am still, but I'm not as afraid. And I also think Pierce has set Severo up as a character to kind of have, like, he's undeniably the fan favorite, right? Like, everyone's like, hail Severo. Okay, all right. For where I've
for the
been
most part,
existing on the world,
right.
Especially in the original trilogy, he was like, you know, everyone wants Severo.
He was the dude. Yep.
Yeah, and so for where he's at now, I think, and especially where it ended, I think it's kind of like we all expect him to die. And so it's just kind of like, is Pierce going to do like, yep, cool, expect him to die, he's dead? Or
PJ's just contemplating this for the first time and you could see it. He just broke emotionally.
My running theory is that he's going to get fucking Peter Malaked, which, again, you're not going to get a cover at the Hunger Games, but he's essentially going to get turned on Darrow and then released back into Darrow's care and fuck them up from the inside, which would kill me. But then in my brain, Darrow and Victor put him down like a dog, and it's very devastating in what I have thought is going to. Hopefully it won't happen. Hopefully he just lives happily ever after, and that's the real fuck up. But that's what, like, I'm very torn with Severo now. And I was like, hardcore Severo is my favorite character, love him, would die for him. But now I'm like, if he dies, could I survive it? Probably. Which is a very weird place to be.
I guess the question there is, even if that doesn't happen and he just comes back, like, and he shows up and talks to Victra and learns about Ulysses and what happened there, does that break him?
I mean, just thinking of the parts of, like, he's the first son, but then he didn't know he was a son, and then is he going to know that he's a son, and is that going to fuck him up? Or I don't know. I also think by, like, 4 kids, and sorry to anyone who has that many kids, like, that's too many fucking kids. Nobody needs that many.
I'm the oldest of 5, so yeah, I feel that.
I'm also the oldest of 5.
It is too many kids. It is too many children.
I'm an only child, so.
I entirely agree. I'd drop the lower 3 in a heartbeat.
Well, the fact that Pierce Brown couldn't even keep the name right, the fact that the author couldn't even get the name of the second child right, I'm just like, see what I mean?
Was that
like,
Calypso?
It went from like not being, it was like Diana at one point, and then it was Celine, and you're just kind of like, what the fuck's her name? Sorry, I brought that up. But that's what I mean. Like, I don't know, honestly. I don't know if that will be the thing that breaks him. I think if anything were to happen to, I want to say Electra because she's the favorite, but I also don't think anything would happen to her. Like, realistically, I feel like she's got a bit of plot armor. I feel like the kidnapping was the happen to her sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
I don't think it's going to get much worse. I really don't know, actually. Now that you've mentioned it, I'm really not sure. And I don't think I care, which is the worst part because I love Severo. And in my brain, I'm just like, I feel like I've written him off already. And I don't know if that's a good thing because it's only really happened in the last book. So.
Yeah, right. Like, he's totally gone for the most part. I mean, he shows up in the intervening scenes before kind of the Day of Red Doves and everything like that, but he's not there, and his presence is kind of missed. I mean, to some degree, but I think it's also filled in by a couple of other. I mean, Ephraim is more comedic, of course, and so he kind of fills that void in a dark, cynicism. And then Cicero, I think, as well, is pretty funny in Lysander's chapters. I don't know if you got that, but I was like, this is the gold humor of Cassius that we got back in Red Rising.
That's what I mean. Like, I just didn't care about so many characters because there were so many characters.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's awful.
Bringing up Electra. This is something that Cross and I never actually talked about, but is a quote that stuck in my head, and I want to know what you guys think of it. During the reunion of Pax and Electra and their parents, their moms, Virginia says to Elektra, like, look how big you've gotten, or like, look how much you've grown. And just deadpan, Elektra responds, maybe you've just gotten smaller, and then walks away. Any thoughts on that comment? What that might mean?
Are you paying attention to that because you are heightist?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with a physicality.
It's a metaphorical.
I think it's entirely metaphorical.
She's become touchable now, as opposed to, you know, she's the sovereign, she's Mustang, like, she's untouchable. That's what I thought with the Red Dog stare. The fact that anyone had the balls to touch her in, like, a physical brutality way, I was like, whoa. It's like you're meeting your heroes. Like, when your heroes, you find out that your favorite author has done something awful, or your favorite celebrity has done something terrible, and you're just like, you're a little more human now, like a little more mortal. Is that what you mean?
Isn't that a weirdly hostile, like, response from Elektra at that point?
Oh, not from Elektra. I would expect that from her. But just in general, like, it is still like, it could come from Pax and still sting. I think it would have stung more, actually. But yeah, I mean, like, it's not out of character, but it is interesting. And especially because I don't think Elektra's one of those characters that, I mean, obviously admits her feelings, but would admit that she admired Mustang. And obviously as her, like, suitor aunt and everything, there's a bit of that. But I think, you know, as a strong female role model, maybe, I think it would be really interesting as well. But then I'm not really sure what her relationship is, how much she knows about what Mustang did to get them back. So that's kind of like, is she saying, you know, you could have done more to help us? Like, if she said that to Darrow, it would make perfect sense. Like, you know, he didn't come back to help or whatever. And so I think it just depends on a lot of, like, subtext that we don't have or see, that we just kind of are left to make up for ourselves, in my opinion. Yeah,
but that would also be, I feel like we have most of the information that Elektra has about what they were doing behind the scenes to try to get them back. Like, I don't think she has that much information at this point.
But also Mustang's really hard to read, which is hard, like, half of her character. Yeah. You know, like, she'll give you what she wants you to see. And that's why I liked her POV. Originally I was hesitant because I was like, what do we get from her? Like, super boring. But having, like, the face, like the mask, and then the actual heart of it all, I think that might be, and again, kids, like, I don't want to give them too much credit, but, like, realistically, I don't think she has the brain capacity to acknowledge that. Like, she's obviously got some. As a Gold, as the daughter of Victra, you know, she's smarter than your average kid. But like, it wasn't until I was an adult that I was, like, thinking about half that shit in terms of, like, people saying one thing and meaning something else. So
yeah, that's fair.
That's also how I feel about Pax's character at this point, which is difficult to parse. You know, like, as a 10-year-old, we've talked about it a couple of times, but the, like, intellectual differential between, like, a 10-year-old, a human 10-year-old, and a Gold 10-year-old, completely different in theory. I agree. I guess. Yeah, it's got to be.
I agree.
Yeah. We made a lot of, like, To Catch a Predator jokes with, like, Lysander and Seraphina. So, like, that was a whole thing because Seraphina's, like, 15 and Lysander's, like, 20. And so, like, there's that whole discourse. But so Lysander's, like, 20 years old and Seraphina's, like, 15, 16.
I'm pretty sure she's, like, 18.
Well, so yes, something like that. She's presented as older, but in Morningstar, she's a 6-year-old.
Yeah,
and it's 10 years
a
later.
Decade. So it's like she's 16, maybe 17 at best.
But even that being said, I wouldn't trust the editing process in terms of, like, that could have just been, like, in the first book that I got, it fucking says that Dancer is married to Darrow's mom.
Correct, which I actually never told PJ that was the mistake, and that's why you should not read the Dramatis Persona, is because it does make that specific error, which is egregious. Yeah,
which that, and then even to say the Severo's daughters' names, like, there are some things that I don't trust, but, like, agreed, like, it could just be that I fucked up and she just they all just read older. Even Lysander in Morningstar reads older than whatever the fuck he was. So
yeah, very, very true. He does, even as a 10-year-old, he actually reads very similar to Pax. He's very intelligent, you know, like he just is to begin with. And that makes a lot of sense given the upbringing. So that matches. Kids, children. Oh, how vile it is to have to take care of another human. Ugh.
No, that's right. So, I love this. Like, this, I haven't spoken to fucking human beings in a long time who are, like, adults who can give you more than, like, and, like, vomit on you. So I really appreciate it.
I mean,
thank you.
We'll do that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, long distance, nailed. It's a whole problem.
a mummy kink. No, absolutely not. Fuck off.
Oh man.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you for checking on me.
Exactly. Postpartum is
so
real.
Maybe
Nate.
So given that Lysander knows of Atalantia's intent, I find it very hard to believe that he doesn't have some sort of ulterior motive beyond this is what will help the society most.
For sure.
Especially given the way that he's kind of progressed as a character and devolved from that really kind of honorable, this is what gold should be.
The iron gold standard, kind of.
Yes. Yeah. He's kind of devolved from that a little bit.
Sure. It is very tainted.
Yeah.
Exactly. What do you think we can expect from him going forward, especially in relation to Atalantia? And do you think there will be any sort of amicable end to their joining?
I think we can expect some more pussy ass bitch shit. And that's all I really expect from Lysander at this point. Like, I don't even care. I don't even care what he does because I know it's going to be pussy bitch. He could like save Darrow and I'd be like, yeah, you pussy bitch, you better. I agree. I definitely ulterior motive, thought that from the beginning. But he's always had a mummy kink, like when you think about it. And so any sort of mummy to him, he's like, I may hate this, but I'm still going to blow my load in her. So it's a very strange, I feel like anytime you introduce, no offense, a man who thinks with his dick, like it's not men in general.
Anytime you put a man in the story, it's just going to be a problem.
The fact that I even like Darrow, he had to work really hard for that. No, yeah, look, I hope that he that slips her one like with a knife, kills her is what I was getting at. That is not a jacking off motion that I'm sure will happen anyway. Yeah, look, I hope he kills her with a knife to the jugular. Yeah. But also I kind of hope she kills him or like, you know, uses that snake, wraps around his throat, like really brings him to the brink of death in some like weird autoerotic asphyxiation thing. Like if Pierce Brown is only going to give us sex through them, I want it to be fucking disgusting. I want it to be so gross that we never want anything from Pierce Brown sexy again. So
now
no,
all I want is Hypatia to be in the bedroom with them, like on a regular basis.
She is
there.
Yeah,
but
she's
not like I want one or both of them to be choked during the act by the snake.
I have owned a snake, and I would never wish that on him. He was an asshole, but I would never wish that on him. Look, like I said, I'm not super invested as long as he dies a horrible death, but I also don't see that happening. I don't know what will happen. I keep forgetting that he's a wax melt like 90% of the time. I forget that he looks like a sad candle, but
because half of his face is burnt. Yeah, half.
You
like
forget,
this half.
Because everyone keeps getting fixed up. They keep getting remade and carved. You're like, oh, I bet he's beautiful. And then you just picture Atalantia like licking like the melted skin and like tonguing the eye hole. It's disgusting, but that's where my brain went. So
there was a period in high school in which I was a diver for the diving team, and I smashed my face into the board and ground up this half of my face. Oh, but like I literally can imagine the way that Lysander looks, because I'd look in the mirror and I was like, I look disgusting. Like the half my face was scabbed over, and I was just like, oh. And when Lysander was described, that was I feel you. Like that sucks.
But I appreciate it because everyone else is gorgeous, so I appreciate that he's fuck ugly. But then
there was
there
was another quote that we kind of glanced over during that triumph from Atalantia, which said, "I told you to go earn a scar, not become one." So
she's brutal. Hey there, folks. Shortly after this moment, we actually lost the audio on Piéra's side for about the next 7 minutes or so before she had to go take care of her little one. So it was fantastic to have her on, but unfortunately we lost just this little segment. However, even before this, in this moment of which is now lost in time, we agreed to do another episode and had already laid out some plans to do one relatively soon. So thank you so much, Piéra. Of course, we're going to say that again here and there. but just wanted to cut in to explain why this episode ends kind of abruptly. All right, back to Cross. Thank you so much, Piéra, for making time in your schedule to chat with us about everything Dark Age and a lot of Red Rising in the universe at large. Definitely would love to have you back at some point to chat more about this and or other books that we read. It was such a great time. It was fantastic. We, and not speaking ill of anything else, we came to the same sort of like bond that we do in a lot of our episodes in like 10 minutes as opposed to an hour. Yeah. Which is great. But it's my cheeks hurt right now.
I was smiling the entire time. This was such a joy
hard
to actually record.
Yeah.
This was so much fun. So I am so happy to have had her here. This was great.
It was a great episode, and we got to talk about a lot of things. And there's so much more to uncover as she had like given us ideas and other things that she wanted to talk about. So there's no doubt that in the future, at some point or another, we will find a way to make it back with Piéra and discuss further about Red Rising. I'm sure by the time that we get to the 6th book and kind of that ending, there's no way that won't happen again. But it was so fantastic to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Any other thoughts, PJ?
No, this was great. This was all I could have hoped for. I mean, I could have hoped for like 3 or 4 more hours. This would that would have been awesome, but obviously that's impossible to ask of anybody. So
yeah, right. We're very rare because our archetype is certainly doing hour and a half to like 2 to 3 hour episodes sometimes.
We've been doing a lot of 3 to 4 hour recordings lately.
Ooh, yeah, a couple. But when it comes out of the edit, it ends up being shorter, of course. But I mean, so grateful, of course, to everyone who's been a guest on the show. We're so excited. It has been a fantastic opportunity to have everyone on. And that to say, like we've kind of been talking about this being the end of things. We've got like a month-ish worth of stuff left with Red Rising. So we're not even done as far as that goes. So I wanna just real quickly, before we kind of talk about the end of things, talk about what we have coming in the future. So next up, next week, is going to be an episode with Zef, which is going to start with a little bit of Lysander arguments and kind of proponent discussions that we'll be having with Zef Hawaiian, Logan Sandoval, if you don't know him. Incredible, renowned across the United States barbecue chef, one of the best in LA, Simi Valley. Definitely, if you're in the area, check him out. And of course, if you're here, you've probably heard the name because he's been everywhere, and he's been like a day one fan, day one supporter of us here, and so he's been an advocate to make sure. He's like, I have to be on the fucking show, dudes, and if I'm not on the show, I don't know. He said just beer, like there's no way he doesn't get on the show.
Yeah, no. For sure.
So that's going to be great. After that, we're going to be covering the Sons of Ares comics, book 1 and book 2, over the course of 2 weeks. And then we will have at least one postseason episode. So that's where we'll leave you for this week.
Thank you, as fucking always, Tim and Andrew, for making sure this show exists. I don't think it would without them. I think we would just be shouting into our own respective microphones, and none of you would hear it. So thank you, you two. You guys rock. Check out the links to the show notes. You can find our schedule. Check out all our links in the show notes. You can find our schedule, Patreon, previous episodes, websites, socials, fucking everything, all in one very convenient location.
Yeah, and that convenient location will give you access, of course, like PJ said, to the Patreon, to the calendar that you might want to take a look at for the Mistborn reading schedule as we proceed through that series, as well as anything else that we've going on in the future. We've got a lot of things kind of pending, and you'll be able to see all that there. Beyond that, this month and next month, we're releasing a number of unique Patreon shows, which I think are more than worth checking out. We've got the Hardpan show, in which I cover sort of with our producer Andrew, like PJ mentioned, contemporary music and the like, and speculative knowledge. We're going to be talking about Doom Eternal and sort of the failings versus Doom 2016, and then Next month, we're going to be talking about on PJ Symposium, Chernobyl, PJ's favorite series, and also Tim Olson, one of our producers' favorite series. So the three of us will be having that discussion. And there's a lot on the plate going into the future. So yeah. Plenty to check out. But if you haven't, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or give us a follow on whatever platform. It goes a long way to helping boost the show and kind of feed not only just the immediate word of mouth, but also the recommendation engine that is, you know, the algorithms. So thank you so much again to all of our supporters. We can't wait for next week's episode.
Yeah. I think next week's going to be a fucking blast. It's going to be ridiculous is what
it's going to be ridiculous.
It'll be.
Yeah, there's no way.
It's going to be absurd.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I'm having a meat straw next week, so.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. I've already decided.